and welcome to the University of Houston Clear Lake, where the cultural arts positively influence our communities, culture, and society. To quote actor-playwright Harvey Fierstein, art has the power to transform, to illuminate, to educate, inspire, and motivate. And art is the international language we all speak to understand the human condition. The cultural arts at UH Clear Lake brings us powerful experiences that nurture our souls, challenge our imagination, and keep us connected to one another. We are honored to present the work of two of our own, Associate Professor Jason Makepeace and Professor Emeritus Nick Devries. We also invite you to come enjoy the University of Houston system-wide public art on display throughout the campus at the University of Houston Clear Lake. Again, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Blake. We are, as I said, honored to have you with us. Before diving in, let us take care of some housekeeping issues today. We've planned a 40 to 45-minute conversation followed by a Q&A session at the end. Please submit your questions at any time through the Q&A chat box, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. And we've also set aside some time upon the conclusion for a quick survey. Moderating the conversation today are Dr. Samuel Linden Gladden and Eric Despard, both leaders at UHCL and members of the Public Art System-Wide Committee. Samuel Glidden, PhD, is Interim Dean and Professor of Literature of the College of Human Services, Sciences and Humanities at UHCL. Dr. Glidden focuses on 19th century British literature, literary theory, and cultural studies. Eric Despard, MA, is the university's Cultural Arts Director. In that capacity, he oversees the university's Bayou Theater as well as its art gallery. Eric has spent his 30-year career as a professional musician, a professor of music and art, a community music school, and a director of university cultural arts programs. So with that, take it away, Samuel and Gladden. And Eric, we're all excited to hear about what's been happening at Clear Lake.
Thank you so much, Maria. This is Samuel Gladden. Since its founding in 1974 as an institution of higher education dedicated to serving the needs of NASA scientists and citizens in the surrounding community, the University of Houston Clear Lake has placed art at the center of its identity as well as at the literal center of campus, seen most prominently in Pablo Serrano's Spiritus Mundi. This major work, a key holding in the University of Houston System Public Art Collection, was commissioned by Dr. Calvin Cannon, the inaugural dean of what was then the School of Human Sciences and Humanities. Serrano's work celebrates the union of dualities, such as darkness and light, solidity and fluidity, and earth and space. The last, again, a nod to our university's relationship with NASA and the Johnson Space Center. Named by the university's first chancellor, Dr. Alfred Newman, and translating into English as The Origin of the World, Spiritus Mundi was recently conserved, revealing a dazzlingly luminous interior that had been dulled by time, an apt gesture for a university poised to enter an exciting new era. We hope you'll come view Spiritus Mundi and the 12 other works from the Public Art Collection on display at UHCL, where the arts enliven, inform, and reflect the innovative and exciting work we do.
So the University of Houston Cultural Arts Programming, exhibitions, and community partnerships provide compelling arts experiences that cultivate creativity, innovation, intellectual inquiry, and deep reflection by embracing global perspectives of thought and culture. As a portal through which UHCL campus and the greater Bay Area Houston community come together, we aim to promote, support, and serve those communities through the UHCL Art Gallery, Art Collection, University of Houston System-Wide Public Art Collection, the Art and Design Program, and the 500-seat Bayou Theater. We look forward to seeing you on our beautiful campus, where the cultural arts inspire intellectual discourse, enrich lives, and further the human experience. I have the great honor now to introduce Emeritus Professor Nick Devries and Professor Jason Makepeace. Before I do that, though, I'll just sort of give a brief bio of each. So Nick Devries earned a BA in biology from Hardin-Simmons University, a BFA, in Visual Arts from the University of Houston, and an MFA in Studio Art from the University of Oklahoma. Professor Emeritus at UHCL, Nick is also an honorary professor of art and design at Bratislava in the Slovak Republic, where he spent a senior Fulbright fellowship in 1995. Nick retired from UHCL in 2014. Jason Makepeace received a Bachelor of Arts degree with a minor in art history from the College of Charleston. During his time in Charleston, Jason studied in Cortona, Italy. He received a Master's of Fine Arts degree from the University of Houston, and Jason is currently an Associate Professor of Sculpture and the Director of the Program in Art and Design at the University of Houston, Clear Lake. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll begin with the first question. And this one is for Jason, and there will be a follow-up question for Nick. Professor Makepeace, has the pandemic impacted the focus of your work and your creative output? And how have you adapted and changed the way you teach your studio classes?
Since the pandemic, since spring break of last semester, it sort of really at first took me away from art making, being an art maker, but also an educator. I had to really switch the way and my focus and the way I interact with my students from a hands-on, face-to-face perspective. I really had to turn around and become the sculptor that teaches through the virtual world of the internet. And so once I got myself past that point and established that connection through Zoom and through Blackboard and things like that, I was able to really, start focusing back on my artwork. And if you were always, with the pandemic, there's all this different levels of anxiety from your own beliefs and your own thoughts and your own research and your friends and family talking with you. It's hard to mentally break away from what's going on in the entire world and how quickly this thing spread through the world. And so I found that finding ways back to my studio really let my anxiety rest. And so not so much that I'm making artwork that's influenced or invested through research of the COVID pandemic, but in the realm of, I used my art making to really sort of step away and try to find some sense of normality. And so as a teaching this semester, like President Blake was just talking about, there's a handful, about 20% of faculty or 20% of course offerings that are bimodal, where we're able to start getting back to the students. And so in the realm of talking with students about what's going on in the world and things like that, realizing that these students also need that same sort of release to get away from the pulls of what COVID has brought. And so seeing these students start to interact with each other again and being able to get them back face to face is great, but hearing from them and while we were only online, questioning if what I was doing as a sculptor online was really giving them what they needed, and then hearing the feedback from them of how they really enjoyed having the opportunity to still interact with me and still get educated upon sculpture, even though it was 100% online. You see that same sort of approach of getting away from the anxiety of it all for both them as well as for myself.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Professor Devries, how has the pandemic impacted you, your family?
Well, it has certainly changed our lifestyle a lot. We try to keep a very definite and stable schedule every day so that we kind of know what's going to happen during the day. We know we can't go to the restaurants where we used to go to. I can't go to the galleries like I would like to go to the museums. And so we try to do space, at a level that is comfortable for us and it's safe for us. And at the same time, we're very fortunate to live in an area where we live in Clear Lake, and especially the campus, so that we can go there and we can walk. That is something I really enjoy. And of course, that really makes us, I think, our mental health is certainly something that's enforced there. We have also an area where I live where we have a bayou where you see your wildlife all the time. We see the gators, we see the snakes, we see all of the birds and so on that, we really enjoy being a part of. And that has certainly helped us out a lot. I certainly envy my colleagues who are trying to do the best that they can in the studios. And I know that I would have had a very difficult time trying to cope with all of those issues. And I don't know how they do it. So Jason, I really admire you and the colleagues there at the university in trying to overcome these difficult times, actually.
I do appreciate it. But
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have two questions for both of our artists. The first is, how does your work speak to the past, present, and future of UHCL? And the second is, how does your work fit into the campus's collection of public art?
let me let you go first this time, Nick.
Yeah, sure. Since the beginning of university, and I must say that there are some people who are very important in my beginning studies here at the University of Houston. Dr. Peter Gunther. I noticed that he was part of the public arts collection years ago. And he was actually one of my first art history professors. And he's the one that recommended it to Dr. Bell Cannon to hire me at the university. Very, very happy that he was able to do that for me. I found a place here on the campus that's just fantastic. For the last 40 years, I've really enjoyed working here. Dr. Cannon, of course, was somebody who was very instrumental in the fine arts in Houston, as well as on the campus when he began the program here. Program that was wonderful both in theater, dance, and the visual arts. We had the first Shaw Festival here at the university biannually for many years. And we had the dance collective, which he was very also interested and responsible for. We had many fine arts programs and individuals that were brought to the campus, especially having the dinner party with Judy Chicago here on our campus and Leo, and as well as a black box theater where the dinner party was held. And so what a wonderful opportunity for me to meet Judy Chicago and to even be part of setting up her exhibition here at the university. As far as my work is concerned, I work in facets. There are things that influence me, that I see, that I feel like are important to spend some time with. So I would say I've worked through about 15 different series of arts making on the campus. Each one, I think, probably supported the next. And finally, to come to this final conclusion of the invitation to make an installation on the campus was just, a dream come true for me. And so I think I will leave it at that. And but that certainly has been great accomplishment in my own work and leaving something to the university.
So it's sort of how Nick started off. The influential people that sort of got us to where we are now in the beginning and the middle and where we currently are at, the growth that happens both at the university and as individual art maker. When I was finishing up grad school at U of H, I was participating and attending the International Sculpture Conference that was hosted within Houston. And I was working for a bronze workshop for that conference, and I met Nick Devries. And we talked and interacted and as artist to artist. And then a couple months later, next thing I know, I'm getting a call from him where he needed somebody to come help teach a metal welding shop class, sculpture class. And so just that opportunity in my own right is a great honor, but at the same time, having the opportunity to have a public sculpture piece in the collection of the systems collection and being held out front of U of H Clear Lake at one of the main drives into the campus, but also right out front of the Arbor North building, which houses both our bronze foundry, our wood shop, metal shop, as well as the ceramics area. It's a great honor. So since starting teaching at U of H Clear Lake, we were a Bachelor of Arts program, and we were a 2+2 program with juniors and seniors. And now we offer the terminal undergraduate degree. We've grown to offer a BFA with diversity of minors. And we're a 4-year institution now. And so just seeing that growth, these new buildings, the Arbor North building, Nick and I had the honor to be a part of working with designers, architects, and the contractors, construction crews to develop these new buildings. And so just seeing how much support from the university, from the system, but both and from Clear Lake, just seeing, like the president said, just how important arts is on our campus, as well as the system. I just see more things coming. Eric Despard, he's new to the university and is bringing a lot of cultural arts in theater, and the director of the gallery. So I just see more new and better things. And so with my artwork itself, this current work is based on exploration of terms and craftsmanship. I play with the word immobility and the definition of mobility in different bodies of work, from the physical definition to the psychological definition. But being immersed in a wildlife refuge at the University of Houston Clear Lake, I thought it would be real poignant to juxtapose these modern day kayaks still embedded, immobilized in the log, paying homage to the craftsmanship of the dugout canoe, to be amongst the verticality of the trees that this campus sits amongst. And so to be a part of such a great collection with Serrano, with Dorothy Hood, and there's so many, being right across the grassway to Nick Devries' piece, it sort of comes full circle. So it's a great opportunity, and I'm real honored to be a part of it.
All right. So to both of you, if you could please expand a little bit. Each of you touched on the idea of place, being in this beautiful preserve. Can you talk about your process of choosing the location of your installation on the campus, and sort of what impact that had?
Yes, Eric, I can certainly do that. When I was first invited to think about a space for the campus, it was to be inside of a building, and it was to be part of the foyer space of the Bayou building, which was kind of a restrictive area, but one that certainly, I would be proud of having a sculpture piece located. The committee met, and after they saw what my work was and how it was influenced by things like the rock gardens of Asian art, the tea house gardens, the committee decided that they would ask me if I would consider building the piece outside. And that, of course, I was very happy with, because I think for what my ideas were to have it outside somewhere, not inside. And so it took a while to kind of find a place on the campus, but finally decided upon the space where I had spent the last 40 years right behind the Arbor building, main Arbor building, a wonderful space that was created by the new building that was built. And so with the woods around and my love for nature and my love for texture and color and form, I thought that would be a perfect place for the piece. One of the things that you have to understand about this particular installation is that how it started. The title of the piece that I have there is called The Frisian Horses. Now, the Frisian horses, it comes from, actually, it's synonymous with the term caltrops, which of course were objects that are there to ward off the tanks during military times. It's a way of walling off an area. It's a way of a defensive mechanism. And in studying what caltrops really were, I came to some readings that dealt with how caltrops were used in Holland, in the Netherlands, where I grew up, and especially in the northern part of Holland, of Friesland. And it was stated that when the Dutch were fighting the Spaniards who came in on their horses, Dutch not having the horses in that area, they made forms like the caltrop, which is, if not familiar with, you can see it there on the screen, like a jack, as in the games of jacks. And so these devices were then used to use as defensive mechanisms to fight the Spaniards. And I said, gosh, you know, what an interesting idea. And to call what I built was caltrops, and I called them the Frisian horses. Now the caltrops, where they came from, basically was my senior fellowship in Slovakia. I was a Fulbright scholar there in 1995 and worked there for almost 5 or 6 years beyond that. But in, I think it was 2006, I was asked to come back and do a workshop in Bratislava, Slovakia. And when I was there was some conflict that was going on because due to the 9/11 here in the United States, the US embassies were fortified in nations, foreign nations. The building was fortified to the extent that really disturbed the citizens. And it was basically because of a wall that was built in front of the embassy, but which was in a really beautiful old 15th century square. And as a result, as you can imagine, the citizens were very opposed to that particular defensive construction. And so while I was there for a workshop in Bratislava at that same time, I was working with my students, and I decided also to build some pieces which were basically then the caltrop pieces. And I think that the image that you see on the bottom left-hand side were those images, and that is right in front of the Danube River that separates Slovakia from Austria. And so those are the pieces that I was building with my students at the time. But at the same time, the embassy had requested that I work with some of the Slovak artists at the embassy. We could have an exhibition there that may somewhat assuage the situation with the citizens. A lot of the protesters were artists and were faculty members there. And so it was decided that we would have an exhibition, and it would be entitled Bridges, or Mosty, the Slovak term for bridges. And within this exhibition, which was the following year, I came back, built a number of pieces here in the States, sent them back over to Slovakia, to the embassy. And instead of having these very severe angle pieces, as you see, I decided that I would begin to make those softer. And so, like almost a bridge between that very defensive mechanism, and as you see in the top left-hand image there. And so for the next number of years, I built pieces that were based upon that. And it was a great exhibition that we had there with the Slovak artists and myself. And I thought it was very fruitful and very, very good exhibition for the citizens and for those who were working with the Academy at the time. So that's basically where the Frisian horses and the title comes from. And so the forms were altered and now altered to a point where they became more human-like. And so the forms, as you can see, became much more organic and playful. Within the image that you see there on the left-hand side, you see a caltrop form that's been softened. And then there was a transformation to a more organic form. And also, I love the sculpture work of Henry Moore. And so by even opening some of the areas which of the sculpture pieces, which we call virtual space, I decided that this was the direction I wanted these pieces to go in for this permanent display. So it's a little bit about the history of the pieces and how they came about, and it was something that I'm very proud of.
Jason, your work in the collection is literal, although stylized, and Nick, yours is much more abstract. How do these artistic modes reflect or extend your larger bodies of work?
Well, like with my work, like I said a little bit earlier, if you put my bodies of work visually together and you didn't have any labels or any explanations by the work, you might say they were made by different individuals, different artists. But after like reading the artist statements or reading the philosophy that and the approach I have for each body of work, there's always this running consistency of craftsmanship and the importance of craftsmanship, more considering myself and my hands a machine, much more of a traditionalist when it comes to being a sculptor, being able to work material really well. And so I'm not sort of pigeonholed in one medium. The theme and whatever I'm investigating sort of dictates what materials I might use as a sculptor. And so from there, the craftsmanship is a baseline, but I really have gotten stuck on this word of immobilize or immobilization. And I've done bodies of work that were based on social frustration and moral upbringing and the impatience of society. And depending on who you are, it's going to sort of freeze you up or frustrate you or not. And so I did bodies of work based on more of that psychological immobilization. But the physical immobilization came from a stint way back at College of Charleston. I dislocated my ankle and was in crutches and boots for a year of my life. And I was never the same until I finally got through all that rehab. And I really looked into the immobilizing factors of what orthopedic restraints do. And so that sort of really caught my eye. And then from that point forward, it's evolved into a handful of bodies of work. And so within this current body of work, Multiple Subtractions, I'm more trying to immobilize and let the viewer experience or realize the respect of the history of the single man vessel. The craftsmanship it took to do a dugout canoe, but you don't go buy a dugout canoe these days. You go buy a mold injected plastic, a carbon fiber kayak or scull or canoe. And so the original, the modern day kayak is still made by a craftsman, an engineer that designs the physics of that vessel so it produces in the way in which it's designed. And so I wanted, no matter how material and techniques have progressed, as we as human beings have progressed, it all stems from a history. And that's a real important factor. That history sort of goes back, like my grandfather, when I was 11 years old, showing me how to use a bandsaw at 11 and showing me a shop. And I think quietly that sort of passion and respect I have for him has just sort of guided me through of how I go about making my artwork. And so I try to expose a modern day kayak out of some sort of section of log that remains, as if it's paying that homage. And so like the video shows is the subtractive sort of traditional way of just carving wood with a mixture of traditional tools to more modern day air driven tools. And you know, and the thing with these works here are more seen from my perspective as interior works, because one, nature would take a hold of them and rot, and they would have a very short lifespan. So when I had the opportunity to put a proposal for a piece based on this body of work, I had to think about materials that can withstand the environment. And so I decided upon this skeletal sort of CAD drawing of a sit on top kayak embedded from a tree, not a log that has been cut down or a tree that's been cut down, but to sort of show that this exists within it, you know, to find it within it, but being the modern dugout canoe, the modern dugout kayak. And so the base itself actually goes 8 feet down into the ground, and I had to crate and rent and all this different kind of equipment. And there's a concrete pier. And so, and then I've sheathed the pier with metal steel lath and laid up concrete recipe. And I sculpted and textured the concrete to look like the trees around. So I went around and took picture after picture of the trees amongst the campus, just to try to make sure the staining and the coloration of my concrete sort of was as realistic to somebody just walking by. It's like, look at that, that's on a tree, when it's physically concrete. And so after working with the committee, I had 5 different sites, 1 interior site and 4 exterior sites, and working with a few that suggested the funding came from that 1% for the arts with the new buildings on campus. Being a part and being honored to be a part of the development and the growth of the BFA program, the new buildings on campus, we felt like the sculpture professor that is currently here to have this sort of out front, sort of drawing people into the area. Once you draw in and you turn the corner, you see Nick's pieces, and you're amongst the main area of campus where the art and design program exists. And so that's sort of why we decided this spot. But I also, you know, giving back and being honored and bringing all this craftsmanship, it's sort of being an artist, but working with my students. I had 12 students come out when I was doing the final install of the concrete structure of the tree trunk, and they all sort of got to work with me hands-on. And so one, to select this spot, but also to give pride to the students that are a part of our program, and have the opportunity to work on a public art piece and see and hear what all goes into it. So there's a lot of things going on, but this is why we picked this spot.
Perfect. So this is the point where we move on to the question and answer.
Okay.
So some of the Q&A questions that are coming in, I think one of them was answered. What is the meaning and association with the name Frisian horses? So I think Nick, you answered that really well. We have another question here that says, Jason, you have seen a dramatic change in tone within the subjects of your students' work since the pandemic. Art is such a vessel, and I'd imagine there are new subjects being expressed.
So that little first part of the question, Eric, was it asking about different tones with my students or with my work?
Both. Within the subjects, so I'll read it again. Have you seen the dramatic change in tone within the subjects of your students' work since the pandemic? So it sounds like student work.
Yeah, one, right now when we were fully online over the summer and finishing up last semester, a lot of students last semester already had things up and rolling before the pandemic came in. And so they were sort of continuing and finishing those pieces. The summer pieces, I had a few that started to bring in that what everybody sees every day. You know, it's like, can you draw this person? We know where the eyes, nose, and mouth are, but we're not used to seeing people with your PPE, your mask on. And I had about 2 or 3 students bringing that into their subject matter, into their compositions. But it's sort of add upon this. I mean, both the pandemic and then all the social dilemma and issues that are going on, I think have both brought some tone changes within students, or I would say even sort of freeing them up. I've noticed them to be able to really sort of tap into their individual emotions. I have students of diverse beliefs and backgrounds that are more apt to be willing to discuss it and be proud of that. Right now, I'm currently teaching a capstone course, which is a non-art making course. It's working with students, senior seminar, where we help them sort of get all the documentations, the website, the design and artist statements. And some of these artist statements, it blows your mind how more open you, like, I've been sorry to sort of stop there, but been teaching this course off and on since I've been at this university, and seeing how much more willing students are to delve into their individual views and not being worried what people think, but at the same time, you know, push and request people to engage their artwork and think about different points of view. And so, like I said, my work is right now is currently, I see it towards the tail end of the body of work because I have some ideas, but it's not based upon any of this pandemic. I see my ability to make my artwork right now a way to sort of unplug from the worries. And I mean, no, in this day and age, an artist's composition and what they want to express with their artwork is wide open. And so I foresee a lot more artwork dealing with these points and these sort of mountains that have come upon us.
Thank you. We have another question. So it says, thank you for both being here. Nick, can you tell us more about the exterior texture of your Frisian horses?
Yes. One of the things that I've always enjoyed using clay, and that is there are so many textural marks that one can leave on a surface. And I always like to show process marks as well. As you look at those pieces on the screen now, you can see some horizontal lines, and a lot of those are due to the process that I used in making, and that is I used coils of clay, which start at the bottom, and I think there might be even some slides that show that, but by starting, as you can see right there, that particular slide shows the coils of clay that I used in making these pieces, and so I slowly worked my way up, studying a little bit about Japanese pottery making and sculpture making. Most of them were used coils of clay like that, which were then pressed from the inside and the outside and slowly worked their way up. And so I like the marks that you see there on the piece also are finger marks. So those are all marks that are left in the clay, which I wanted to use. And then later on, after they were fired, I think if you've ever worked with ceramics or not, for those of you who have, you know that the piece has to be fired for it to be hardened and to be permanent. The pieces that I built for this installation, I compounded the clay so that it would be able to take the elements outside rather than dissolve, as you could imagine, without firing and without particular temperature. So these were fired to a stoneware temperature, a high temperature, so it would be impervious to the weather and to various conditions. But what you see on the pieces, the marks are all left by my fingers and by the technique that I used in making the pieces, and then stained after they were fired in the kiln, as you can see. And then they were, we put bolts underneath the pieces and rods that are then supporting the pieces on the concrete pedestals. Yeah.
Let's see, we have several questions coming in here. We may be running out of time. Oh, and I see here that Sam, you have a couple of questions also?
I do. I wonder, Jason and Nick, if you both could reflect a bit on the function of art in a university setting. At UHCL, we talk about education as being a transformative experience. Talk to us about how art participates in that.
I know outright through programming within different departments and programs like art history. Art within a campus could be used from that perspective, just directly, where a faculty art history professor could interact and use and work with their students to investigate and discuss things about what's going on in the pieces in the collection and farther into the depths of art history. I know we talked about in the past is, you know, it's like when I was in Italy with University of Georgia, I was in Florence and I found the Mary Magdalene in wood, where it represents Mary Magdalene at a very old, frail age, and it's all carved out of wood. And all there were benches around it. I could walk up and touch it. It just had little string stanchions down by the feet to keep you at arm's bay. But you didn't just go in there and get close to it. You just sort of sat back and was in its presence. And it becomes just a place of just an admiration. It's a place to just, you know, self-reflect. To let somebody clear their mind at times so they can focus on what they need to focus on. But it's hopefully maybe it's to inspire, because like you said, certain works are more representative than others, and it might tickle somebody's fancy and make them think about things. It's like I have pieces that are part of the collection within the International Airport of Houston, and people will dig and find my email or my website and contact me and say, hey, I was waiting for a plane. I'm an avid kayaker. I really appreciate how you went about and what goes into your work. And just, you know, our work is there to grab you. Sometimes it might not grab you today, but maybe in a year, it'll stop you. And so it's not a one and done sort of thing, I think. And so I think artwork on a university campus gives these sort of opportunities to everybody that's on our campus.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, your thoughts on the place of art, the function of art in a university setting?
Oh, absolutely. You know, having a background in science, my first degree is in biology. And so naturally, when I started my art studies here at the University of Houston Central Campus, I went through about every studio that the program offered. And I ended up in an area where I could both use the background that I had, backgrounds like that would relate to geology, to chemistry, to those kinds of things, and the material. And I love working with my hands. And so I gravitated towards the area that would be the most plastic material possible, and that was clay. And so from there, I started developing the forms through a number of different series that I worked, questioning, of course, the idea of design, of form, the functionality of art, what is the meaning of it, and so on, and how does it relate to function. Those are the kinds of things that I started with. These are the kinds of things also I wanted to impart upon my students. And so as I work with my students on the campus, I try to expose them also to, of course, the art on the campus. And we did not have that much art on the campus at the time when I first started. But what the important thing was is that we worked together and we had exhibitions of our work. We went into Houston and we looked at different, we went to visit many studios of artists in Houston so that they could see different ways of working in different manner and the different philosophies exhibited within the work of these artists in Houston. I think that was a tremendous education for the students as they came back to the campus, as they started building their own work. And you could see, especially in the projects that I generally would offer in my classes, is that where there was not a single solution to a particular project or problem, that there would be as many solutions to a particular given project as there were students in the class. And so that certainly, I think, had an influence on their learning of art and how that related also to the other disciplines on the campus. That, to me, was the most important thing, especially in our graduate critiques. As we talked before each class started, we had a session where everyone would express some ideas and things that they had read that week, whether it be from a magazine or whether a gallery they visited or whatever. And so we were able to discuss things like earthworks, for instance. How did that work in the context of making, say, just a pot? And so we had wonderful discussions. And so that was I think, a real lifeline for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, sort of reminiscing, because Nick and I worked together for a long time, and so we miss him since he retired in the 2014. But the days we would, grow and have the opportunities to get art to our students, and we would have there's a created art association. We would have student members that aren't even in the art program, and Nick and I would work with them. And I remember the time we rented a van and we took off to Fort Worth, and we were going to go see the Martin Puryear exhibition. But then Nick's expertise of what all's there at Fort Worth, and then all we just started doing is following around what Nick knew. And
Wow.
So the university as a whole, and the support of the arts, and what the faculty in the program, as well as everybody else at the university, having this art from the collection as well as the other art on campus, it's hopefully the baseline is inspiring. So
Thank you. One of the signal moments on campus was that famous landmark dinner party by Judy Chicago. UHCL was, I believe, the first public institution of higher education to host that. I've heard many stories from our longer serving faculty of lines of thousands of people waiting to get in to see that. Of course, now that is in the Brooklyn Museum. It's one of the iconic pieces of 20th century feminist art. Can any of you tell us about how it came to UHCL and what it meant to the university?
I'm going to step out of this one. I wasn't here when this was here. It's Nick's.
Well, this was a project that was one of Cal Cannon. He was very much into social issues, very much knew quite a few people here in Houston who were very interested in the dinner party. It, of course, originated in California. And there were a number of institutions that would have nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, a lot of them blackballed the the installation. When we had a chance to have it here at the University of Houston, Clear Lake, that was something a lot of people, we did not really know that much about what the dinner party was about. Through a number of conversations and symposia on the campus, it really became an issue within the area. And during the opening of the exhibition, we had hundreds of people that came in from Houston on buses and so on. And so it was a very exciting exhibition for the campus, and it certainly put us on the map. There's no doubt about that. I was very fortunate in being there at the time, of course, and helping Judy Chicago opening up the crates and pulling the objects out of the boxes. And you can imagine my expression when I saw the first plates coming out of the boxes. It was like, wow. And so it was, for me, it was a very exciting thing. And I've been to the Brooklyn Museum a number of times to see the exhibition upstairs there. It's a fantastic installation. For those of you who haven't seen it, you have an opportunity there to see it in a very beautiful setting. And we had a great setting on our campus as well, as a matter of fact. But it was certainly a great piece. And even since that time, Judy has been back to our campus where she gave us we have the piece of her birth project, yes, which is in our building, and which is also a very beautiful piece to see. Judy came down for the opening of that particular, well, actually it's for the unveiling of that piece on the campus. And so it was a great time for the university. It was a wonderful move. And we even recognized her later on through Ms. Davis when she came here as art historian to the campus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we have someone you both know on with us today. This one says, "Hi, Nick. Hi, Jason. Greetings from sunny California.
Jeff Bowen.
Talk a little more about the proposal process. What should an artist expect, and how much, if at all, did the final piece change from the original concept?" And that is from Jeff Bowen.
Yes, of course.
Putting us on the spot. Did you want to start, Nick, or did you want me to?
Go ahead and start, Jason.
I know Nick's proposal was already sort of in stream, and then I had the opportunity to submit a proposal. And so talking with him, and I've worked with a handful of artists in Houston, from Floyd Newsom, who's also in the collection, and he teaches painting at U of H downtown. I worked with one of his first public sculptures along the first section of light rail in Houston, and helped him do a lot of model making and fabrication parts and installation and things. I've worked with Michelle O'Michael for a piece that was out for the International Sculpture Conference in Houston, downtown in a plaza in front of a large skyscraper. So I've had my fair share of helping other artists. I just never truly got myself in the position to have the opportunity to do my own public sculpture. And so with digging into my community, I sort of asked questions to fellow artists that have had it. And so I developed my designs. I sort of had the drawing in a sketchbook a long time ago. And then I sort of started thinking about what materials could make it. And so once I had the materials at hand and the scale in which I truly wanted it, and I really truly at first wanted it out of stainless steel, and probably about 7 feet taller. But then you got to look at budget, and everything your budget has got to cover, from paying engineers to help develop and make sure it can withstand the hurricanes that we frequently can possibly get, and the caliber of wind. You got to think about the accessibility for people or children to climb all over it. And there were so many different factors, and the engineering of the substrate, that 8 foot down into the ground hole I had to dig, was all based on the expertise of engineers and the proper design of the rebar structure for the said casted concrete pier and the bolts and all that stuff. So I had a big learning curve on the technical engineering aspects of things. So there were adjustments there. And then the scale came down, as well as going to steel and powder coating. And things had to be adjusted based on price points and stuff like that. And so once I got that all under control and understood and had everything ready and had the proposal at hand and going there and have it all bound. And so depending on how many people were going to be at the selection committee meeting, having enough professional bound copies of my proposal, and I had a maquette, or a small scale version model of the piece, one to best defend what I was wanting to do and why I wanted to do it. And so after being and I know Nick and I really lined up things, because his was sort of coming in at the same time, and we piggybacked on the concrete company to pour my pier and his bases. And so there's a lot of things that go along. It's not so cut and dry like my objects that I try to get into juried exhibitions. And so even though the piece was finalized or accepted in 14, it pretty much right at the beginning of 15, it was absolutely complete. But I started the proposal at the beginning of 2013. So it was a long run. There's many things I learned too. So as the opportunities arise, it's a lot going to be not as intimidating. Hopefully that answers, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, I can certainly echo a lot of those things that Jason just said. I pretty much went through the same sort of process. It was like my first public sculpture. And of course, one of the things that I had to concentrate on was that first proposal was for an inside of the building to a very narrow space, which was very confining. And so I really had to work through a lot of issues and how I was going to go about working in that narrow space. I had to worry about safety. I had to worry about, the exits and the egresses of that particular space. How would it affect people who were coming through there with carts and those in wheelchairs, of course, and so on. So we had a lot of issues we had to deal with. Jason actually helped me out in the sense of designing wooden bases for that particular space. And it really worked out a very nice design for that. There were going to be, I think, 5 islands in that particular space. Went to the committee with the proposal, did the bound proposal, did that whole thing. And luckily, we had people on that committee, and I want to say people like Mike Guidry, who was on that committee, Marianne Schallberg, who was the assistant to our president at the time. And I know Allison Green was also on that committee, as well as a number of other people. All after I met with the committee, I showed my maquette, and they all were of the opinion that it ought to be an outside piece. And so then my wheels had to start rolling as to where and how and so on, as I explained just a few minutes ago. But yeah, we went through all of that process of working with the FMC on the campus, making sure that everything was in place as far as safety was concerned, and working with the concrete company, and working out all of the details of how that was going to take place. And so we ended up at the 3 islands, so to speak, for the works. And again, all I can say, I'm very honored to be part of the collection. And I just hope that maybe we can get some places there where people can sit and enjoy both Jason's and my artwork.
Thank you again to our panelists, Associate Professor Jason Makepeace and Professor Emeritus Nick Devries, for their time today and for their extraordinary contributions to the University of Houston System Public Art Collection. On behalf of President Ira K. Blake, Eric Despard, and all of us here at UHCL, I invite you to visit the University of Houston Clear Lake campus to experience these and other works in the public art collection. And now as we close, we hope that our attendees will take time to complete our poll. Thank you all for a wonderful experience.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You.
Take care.